Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Today we have another set of crazy revenge stories for you, and our first story today will tell us why we need to be a kind person and respect our employees. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave comments so we know what kind of stories you love the most. Manager tried to take delivery man's livelihood, makes him fear for his family's future. Don't worry, I've got your back. Back in the warehouse days, we had an ever-growing clearance section. Because of this, the company employed a delivery driver to be solely responsible for delivering clearance items purchased by customers. This delivery driver, let's call him John, was amazing. He was a veteran of the industry, had 2 trucks, a smaller one and a larger one, did most of the heavy lifting, always took the time to chat with me as I helped him load up his delivery run, would bring me a beer when it was an extremely hot day, and knew I'd been busting my butt. He'd worked for a bunch of high-end furniture stores, but when the recession hit and companies went belly up or cut costs, he found himself struggling for work. The company I worked for had a problem with delivery drivers due to the fact that the company was cheap and wouldn't pay the industry rates most delivery drivers charged. John was happy to make a few concessions for cash-in-hand deliveries, and naturally management took advantage of that. After a few problems in the warehouse, I asked John if I could get a few shifts working for him as his delivery offsider. John immediately said yes, as he had problems of his own with lazy employees. I immediately fell in love with the work. We do a 4 a.m. start to get deliveries on the watch 6, and if we scheduled it correctly, we could be done by 2 or 2:30. I loved the physicality of it, loved being on the open road, and loved swapping stories with John. He would talk about his wife and kids, and I'd make fun of his tacky scorpion tattoo. The problem started when John would get his delivery run sheet from the store and would see the delivery prices quoted to the customer from the manager. To give you an idea, the store would charge $95 for a local delivery. This was with a full day of deliveries, approximately 20 to 30 deliveries. John would charge slightly more as he was doing maybe 5 to 8 deliveries, and they'd be all over, as opposed to being in a specific area. John would go in and chat to the manager and ask why a customer was only being charged $50 for a 3-seater sofa bed going up 6 flights of stairs, when normally it'd be a $110 delivery charge and $100 for every flight of stairs past the first level. The manager would just shrug and say she reduced the delivery to close the sale. We'd get other deliveries where we'd have to carry a 10-piece sectional sofa up 7 flights of stairs because the customer wouldn't reserve an elevator, or in some cases, the goods wouldn't fit in the lift. We'd get the sofa inside, unbag it, connect the sections, take the rubbish away, only for the customer to hand John $30 in cash. It was soul-crushing. I remember getting the customer to sign off on the paperwork as John said he'd meet me back at the truck. I grabbed the last bits of rubbish and made my way downstairs and jumped into the passenger seat. John was trying not to look at me. He'd been crying. I asked if he was okay, and he kind of broke down and confessed to me that he was struggling with bills, that the company I worked for was his only decent-paying job, that he was getting screwed over by the manager, that he might have to sell his trucks to pay his bills. My heart went out for this guy. He was becoming a fast friend and genuinely loved his job. I began to hatch a plan, based on my inside knowledge of the manager, the area manager, the general manager, and the company in general. I took John to a small bar and bought us a few drinks. We sat in a booth, and I began to lay out my plan for revenge. I asked John why he didn't give the manager a price list and charge more for his deliveries. John, if I do that, the manager said they'd drop me as their driver and find someone cheaper. I laughed and told him, call her now and quit. I explained that we'd seen the run sheet for tomorrow. We had a massive run, 10 deliveries, and we already knew the manager had quoted ridiculously cheap prices, like $20 a delivery. John wasn't sure. Look, any other contract driver would charge $200 minimum per delivery. There's no way another driver will touch this company. John got on the phone, called the manager, put her on speaker, and quit right then and there. The manager, as expected, talked a big game. She said they'd be better off without John and that he just lost his biggest contract. John hung up, looked sick and panicked. I reassured him it'd be okay. I checked my watch. The store closed at 5. It was currently 1. I promised John by 4 o'clock he'd get a call back from the manager. In the meantime, we set about creating a new list of demands, and if they were to employ John, they'd do the following. Charge a preset price given to them by John, pay for John's off-cider and gas. For any difficult deliveries, balcony lifts, fire escape deliveries, they'd charge an additional fee. That if they wanted to terminate John, they'd have to give him the appropriate notice. Sure enough, at 4:30, John's phone rings. Well, would you look at that? It's the manager. John answers and puts the phone on speaker. The manager, in a much more polite tone, says that if John will deliver tomorrow, she'll offer him a $50 gift card for the store. I hang up the call. John looks at me in disbelief. I tell him when she calls back, lay out your demands, and that's that. 5 minutes later, his phone rings again. It's the manager. John answers and puts her on speakerphone. The manager starts her spiel, but John cuts her off. John begins listing the problems he's having with the company. At first, he's nervous, but then the months of being screwed over kick in, and he lays down the law like a champion. The manager laughs off John's request, and I encourage John to relay the next bit of information to the manager. He says, "You know as well as I do, no other contract company or contract driver will get out of bed for less than $250 a delivery. For what you're proposing, you either sign off on my demands or good luck tomorrow." Manager, fine. Do the delivery tomorrow, then we can... No, I'm coming down there now. You'll sign off on everything, then we load up the truck tonight and finish the delivery tomorrow. And he hangs up. We go to the store and the manager looks PO'd. She keeps complaining that John has her between a rock and a hard place and that John is extorting her. I can't help but point out that I'm sure John's kids would like to eat tomorrow. John slaps the new contract he's written up by hand on the truck and says, "Sign it." The manager signs it and John backs into the warehouse. We notice, as per usual, it's sofa beds, glass coffee tables, the heaviest items this company sells. The manager walks out to the warehouse and smirks as we struggle to load the extremely heavy goods into the truck. As we finish, the manager has a few snarky parting words. "John, with this new contract, just so we're clear, you have to fulfill the delivery no matter what." No matter what, huh? Even if the customer isn't home, I expect you to make sure the goods are there. I don't want any goods coming back to the warehouse. You got it. It was a glorious delivery day the next day. 80% of customers' goods wouldn't fit, as the manager didn't explain to the customers they had to measure their door frames. We had customers screaming at us, abusing us, saying it was unfair they now had to pay more than $20, and how dare we charge them more. We just laughed and complied with the manager's directive. We left every piece of furniture at the property. Some in hallways, others in the middle of doorways. Some we just left at the front door as some customers refused to accept the delivery as they didn't want to pay us any money at all. For the nice ones who had cash ready and were happy to pay us for our obvious efforts, we went that extra mile to get the goods in and make sure that they had the best delivery experience possible. Update. What happened with John? After I quit my warehouse job and landed a few acting gigs, I finally landed an acting role on a prominent series. Once at the job, I managed to talk to one of the producers about John, and John got a job picking up the sets from the studio warehouse and transferring the sets to the studio. He would then work with the night crew to erect the sets and get them ready for the next day's shooting. I see him around the studio between setups and also most nights when I rap. He's making great money and comfortably supporting his family and putting his kids through school. And there's still a good hard-earned beer at the end of the day. You know, my heart really goes out to John. You did a great thing by helping this guy out. And our next story. My mom is very good at her job and uses her experience to get revenge against a negligent semi-driver and their company. First, a little backstory. Back in 2008, I got a convertible PT Cruiser for my birthday. Yeah, kind of stupid sounding, but it was cheap, super dependable, great condition, and it was a freaking convertible. I definitely enjoyed the heck out of that car during the summertime. My family did too, which is where the start of this story comes into play. My parents love to take cruises around in the car. They'll go to all sorts of different places, take the dog, and make a nice morning or afternoon out of it. Well, one day back in 2010, they were driving on the interstate with my sister and dog in tow. They end up behind a semi with a flatbed trailer and big stacks of parts strapped down to the top of it. Imagine whitish, shiny metal beams, but smaller. Well, secured would not be a good term to describe this load, because those parts fell off the trailer and right into the path of my parents. They described the scene as chaos. My dad was driving, swerving all around the road to avoid falling pieces potentially going through the windshield. My sister was squeezing the dog for dear life. Pretty much a whole lot of chaos. They finally managed to stop on the side of the highway. The family's terrified. Dog freaked out. Car's in terrible condition as a result of being hit and driving over metal beams. The worst part? The driver kept on going. Didn't stop, didn't pull over, basically left the scene of an accident with the load still not secure. Here's where the ProRevenge comes in. And I mean ProRevenge. You see, my mom is a buyer. A buyer is the one responsible for coordinating prices and purchases of materials for manufacturing and construction companies. Cool fact about my mom, she's very good at this and has a lot of experience when it comes to part identification. And wouldn't you know, there were parts all over the highway. So she, my dad, and my sister all go around collecting the metal pieces that had fallen off the trailer. She then proceeds to go home and uses her work experience to track down exactly where these parts came from. Keep in mind, the only thing she had to go off was a random string of numbers on each part she retrieved. Not exactly easy for the average person, and it took her about a week to finally get to the end result of the research. Using only that information, as well as the knowledge and experience she gained over the years from being a buyer, she not only identified the company who produced the parts, but could also identify where they were produced, the driver of the semi, as well as the destination of the parts. She contacted the manufacturer and threatened to press charges for what happened. Since my mom had all the evidence, the parts were definitely for commercial usage only and shouldn't be in the hands of some mom 150 miles away from the part's destination, as well as the vehicle damage to prove what happened. The manufacturer was forced to pay out fully to repair the car, $5,000 total. Needless to say, the driver was also fired for negligence. I don't always get a Grinch smile of the wonderful, awful variety, but this story was most satisfying. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video to the end, and I'll see you in the next one with more great stories and crazy people in it.